Friends and fellow workers, this is the time which tries the hearts of men. This is the time when we's got to stick together like glue. We knows what we wants and we'll gets it, even if we's blind. Louis Belletti, aka Kid Blink. The Newsboys strike circa 1899, his rousing speech that all but won the strike against Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst as they raised the price of papers in and around New York because it was a busy time. Hello, happy Sunday to you and welcome to another Insta Church. I'm going to do things a little differently this time. I got my suspenders out, my Newsies suspenders. Oh yes, we're going to have some fun because we all need a little boost right now. I know I do, because I'm at the tail end of a 14-day quarantine and sort of losing my mind. So we're going to sing a song or two, okay? And try and stay sane. Just stay sane out there, guys. Newsies, one of my favorite movies. I mean, guys, come on. You haven't wrapped your hand around a light pole out in the street and swung around a little bit singing I'm the King of New York once in your life? I have. I'm not ashamed of it. Yeah, so what can we learn from a musical? I was playing it this week for my kids because I grew up, so I used to love the Newsies, and I lived in a town back when VHS tapes were a thing, dating myself, where you could take your report card in if you got straight A's and you could give it to, it was Network Video. That's what it was, Network Video. You give it to somebody at Network Video and they'll give you a free rental. And so every 6 weeks, we got those report cards. Every 6 weeks I'd go in and they knew. Newsies, it's over there. Nobody ever checked it out but me. So it was like my thing. I watched it a million times. I loved Newsies. So I wanted to share that with my kids. We're quarantined, we're locked up. I want to, let's play a musical. I'm going to show you guys what I loved when I was a kid. And they loved it, I think. I know I did. But it was interesting watching it through the lens of adulthood, through the eyes of who I am today versus who I was as a kid. Because I see something so different in the thematics these days that I missed. I missed as a kid, I think. So I want to share that and see what we can learn from that. But if I was going to sum up the Newsies, I could say two of the songs could give us a picture of the message of this story. And the first one, I think we can look at King of New York. So there's a song King of New York, and I think it tells us the story about who this guy is. So a young Christian Bale is playing Jack Kelly, who's based on the Kid Blink character, charismatic young man who leads the Newsies in a strike against the powerful powers that be. And they break into this song talking about all the things that they want, that wish they could have. And here, I'll just sing it for you because it's great. A pair of new shoes with matching laces, a permanent box at the sheepshead races, a porcelain tub with boiling water, a Saturday night with the mayor's daughter. Look at me, I'm the king of New York. Suddenly, I'm respectable, staring right at your lousy with stature. So it's the song about them. I mean, the boiling water, obviously, I love a hot bath as much as anybody. I can't fault him for that. But, I mean, A Night with the Mayor's Daughter. Hello. What's this thing rated? It's a fun song, but it's funny because I feel like we are the same way. We are fixated on all the little things. Life would be better if my life looked like this. Boiling water and Mayor's hot daughter. But whatever, everybody has their thing, but like everybody wants something that's of this world, that's of this place, and we want to conquer it. We want our crown. I want to be the king of New York. I used to say that. I used to tell my agents on if I was a little tiny kid with like one guest star under my belt, and I'm like, do you guys realize what I'm going to build an empire out here? I'll show you. You just wait. And I look back on that kind of language now, and I'm like, oh my gosh, but I'm guilty of it. Most of us are. And then we have this other song, Santa Fe. Oh, my fave. Santa Fe. What is Santa Fe? Santa Fe is the promised land. Jack Kelly's singing about this place he's never seen, but he kind of knows is there. He feels it. He can picture it in his mind. And in the movie, he talks about family. Mother, daughter, father, son. Guess that everything you heard about is true. He's talking about family. He wants to go to a place where he can have a family. He's been looking for his parents. He doesn't know where they are. Maybe they're in Santa Fe. The Broadway version is a little different, but it paints the picture of, again, there's the contrast between maybe what we're willing to go for. We may not have a crystal clear picture of what it is, but we know something's out there that we want that's better than this life. And he's torn between that and New York. So it goes Santa Fe. Let me go far away, somewhere they won't ever find me, and tomorrow won't remind me of today. And the city's finally sleeping, and the moon looks old and gray. I get on the train that's bound for Santa Fe, and I'm gone, and I'm done. No more running, no more lying, no more fat old men denying me my pay. Just a moon so big and yellow, it turns night right into day. Dreams come true, yeah they do, in Santa Fe. One of my favorite songs of all time. I sang that in high school. I sang that in college. I sang that at every show. I loved it. Not the Broadway version, but I love it. And why? I realize now it's because I've always craved that promised land, that place that's just a place beyond, where everything, there's light all the time, no lying. Nobody's crossing you, and that's what these kids wanted. That's what these kids back in the 1800s wanted, It's beautiful. Alan Menken composed this and just captured beautifully, I think, the hearts of what this whole thing was about, but really captured the heart of what our spiritual journey is about. And I never saw it that way. And I want to talk about 5 reasons why I think we settle for our crowns in New York, those temporary things, and why we are so fixated on that and aren't willing to give that up for the train to Santa Fe. So I'll try and run through this quickly. So 1, we have a fear that we're alone, that God isn't really here, that he's abandoned us. And so what choice do we have but to make the most of this time that we have? We see something about that when we see that Moses goes up on the mountain, and he's there for just a matter of days before the Israelites, who he just redeemed. He just, with great power and wonder and awe, God worked through him to redeem the slaves of Egypt, to make himself a new people. And just a few days without their leader, and they turned to Moses' brother Aaron and said, build us a golden calf, which is one of the gods that they were used to worshiping, that they felt would take care of them and protect them out in the wilderness. They were used to this idea in Egypt, this polytheistic culture, and they wanted to return to that, because now I'm out here wandering and I don't feel safe here anymore. And Moses came down a little upset, but I think it's a good picture of who we are, that, I feel like I've been left to my own devices here and to figure it out on my own. So I'm gonna worship what I worship and find and make my own gods for myself, and I'll find my contentment there. I'll stay in New York, where it's comfy and cozy, and the creature comforts are here to make me feel better. 2, fear will be exposed. And this is a big one. This is a hard one for me too, because we all have done things, and many of us continue to do things even when we try and step out on a better foot, that fly in the face of that turn that we've taken towards the light. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. John 3:20. We don't embrace this idea that God is here and God is good, and that we want to give ourselves to him and walk in a way that's more walking as citizens of the promised land versus walking as, Newsies trying to conquer New York, and it's because we're afraid that we're going to be found out. We're going to be found out, or we're going to be afraid that person that we are isn't isn't going to sit well with those that we've told, that we want to be good, we want to be Christians, or we want to be religious or devout or whatever, and they're going to judge us. And I get that, because a lot of times I've even met through Instituchurch, I've met a lot of really good souls who have a lot of pain because they love God and fear God, and they want a relationship and have a relationship with God, but the church community that they're in has rejected them. You can't come here because you're, fill in the blank, because you're not exactly what we have in mind. You don't look like the model Christian or whatever. And that's painful for a lot of people. And we do have to deal with that, reckon with that crossroads, that intersection of respecting the holiness that God asks and demands of us, and the love that Christ preaches, that we love all and pray for all. And we need to work through that. We need to work through that, and that's a challenging issue, but it's difficult. It's left a lot of people wounded. So fear of being found out is a big deal for a lot of people. Keeps a lot of people away. Contempt towards God for allowing suffering or eternal separation. I mean, obviously, we don't want to give up our power to somebody we feel like didn't create a universe as holy as we would have made it, but like it or not, it's God's prerogative to shape the universe and reality the way that he did. And yes, pain and suffering is real, but we have the choice to not be agents of pain and suffering for others. And that's the call. That's the call. We can redeem a little bit of the universe and win a little back for goodness by being that agent of change. As idealistic as that sounds, that is the mission. That is what we're called to do, despite the way things are. And that little glint of pure, true love, despite the way things are, is worth the freedom, the cost of that freedom to God, I feel. And I think some theologians would agree that free will has its cost, but for true love to exist despite the way it is worth it. And otherwise we'd be no more than robots, So there's a contempt, though, towards God for the way things are. A lack of proof. Like, God, show up and prove yourself. If God only came down in a cloud and spoke, and his booming voice told me exactly what to do, then I'd believe. I think we wait for that kind of thing. But must God prove himself? He says, when you did these things and I kept silent, you thought I was exactly like you. Psalm 50:21. He knows that there's a chasm between us to some degree, enough to allow free will, but enough to where we understand that he's real and here, and we see his divine power through nature and the organization of the universe, and in our own lives, and in that voice in our head, and the universal call in all of us to do something good or communal or to help or to share. I mean, we talked about that last week. So he's there, but do we have a right to do whatever we want and be whoever we want because he's remained silent? That's, again, his prerogative. I pine for the days of, like, Moses, when, you just had this cloud of fire all the time telling you exactly what to do. He spoke from the cloud. And, I wish it was that easy, but it's not. And so we have a responsibility to rise to that occasion, we can still be convicted just because he stays silent. But I like this. Paul says in Romans, the wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them, but because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. Nature itself speaks to the presence and power of God, so that nobody has an excuse. But it's the wickedness of all of us that silences us to keep us still our tongue from proclaiming the power and our need for God. Our hardened hearts. And this is a tough one. And I always feel like hardened hearts says more about, like, the capriciousness of God versus the condition of who we are and where we are in our relationship and proximity to him. But there's a great image that I like that picture like a knot in a rope. That knot is the condition of our heart, right? We're a little knotted up. There's no straight line to God right now. We've twisted things a little bit. God, when he hardens the heart, doesn't cross that boundary of free will and like wave a magic wand and say, you will reject me. I mean, he doesn't cross that threshold, but what he does, he works the circumstances of life in a way that causes us to tug a little bit. The circumstances are here and we're resisting. And the harder we resist, the harder that knot becomes. It's like my kids hardly know how to tie their shoes, but they bring their shoes to me and they're like, can you untie this knot? And I'll go, they've just been tugging at it. So I'll go to try and like untie this thing. And it's like almost fused into this one nuclear bond of like atoms. There's no getting it undone. It's been cinched so tight that it's like, what hope do we have of getting this little knot done, buddy? Sometimes we need some supernatural intervention to open and loosen that knot up to where we can start to then see the world as it really is, as God designed it. That's the hardening of hearts. And I think some of us, that knot has gotten so tight that we have so much contempt towards God that there's little hope of us ever hearing the hope that's really there. And so we have to turn to God and ask him to come in there with those little God-sized tweezers and just tug that little thing apart, start it for us so that we can loosen up a little bit. But that is something he will do and promises to do. In Ephesians 4:18, it says, they are darkened in their understanding, alienated from the life of God because of the ignorance that is in them due to their hardness of heart. So it's a problem. It's something that definitely keeps us away and keeps us mired in our world. I want to be the king of New York. There's no God. I'll resist. But he was prophetic. Blink. He said, we know what we want and we'll get it, even if we's blind. Jesus said, for judgment I came into this world, that those who do not see may see, and those who see may become blind. He came for the blind. He came for us. He died for us on the cross, not because we were good and had seen and proclaimed what he'd done. He did that for us before we were there, while we were blind. He gives us hope. He gives us sight. He opens our ears and our eyes and our mouths, and we learn about who he is and can then speak to what he's done for us. But because we were first blind. So our job is not to be perfect. Our job is not even to know everything there is to know about Scripture and the divine and God. We can't see him, and there's a governor placed there, and he knows. He even says, I can't reveal myself to you fully. It'll kill you. Our job isn't to know everything, but our job is to be known. And then through that, we awaken. We gain sight. The more we wish to be known by God. So the question is, do we want to be king of this place and aim for the temporary pleasures of this life, or are we willing to leave that behind, open our eyes, and get on that train to the promised land? Ain't you glad you got a dream called Santa Fe?